My sister made a joke at my wedding that almost ruined it, but maybe she'll learn that jokes aren't funny when I make one at hers, if her wedding hadn't been cancelled. I have a lot to say, but for those who don't have the time or patience, I'll give a brief summary. My sister did something really awful to me at my wedding and thinks she can now get married happily without me returning the favor. Obviously, I don't want to do anything too harsh, but I want her to understand how I felt. However, my husband, who's always been a fool, wants to do the right thing and thinks I shouldn't do it. Well, not all of us live like we're some sort of wise person. Still, since he's been talking so much about it, it started to make me doubt. I want to know whether I should or shouldn't make the joke. He recommended that I post here to see what people think, so that's what I'm doing. Folks, please don't let me down. I know it all sounds very confusing when I say it like this, so let me give you more context about my situation. My name is Raquel, I live with my husband, Aim, and I'm usually a positive person. I've always had the gift of staying happy no matter the situation. There was only one time I couldn't see the good in things, and that was because of my sister. But I'll talk about that soon. I think I made it clear that I'm a half-full glass type of person. I've always been like that, even though it's caused me some problems in life. I won't lie. Life is much better when you can wake up happy with what you have, instead of wishing for what you don't. Anyway, let's get to the point. Hailey was always spoiled because that's how our parents raised her. Being the youngest, she got a lot of love, and everyone in the family adored her. As a child, she was so cute, and no one could say no to her, not even me. Well, since our parents did everything she wanted or desired, she became extremely spoiled. I got out of that because, when I was her age, our parents didn't earn as much as they did when Hailey reached my age. So, I learned to adapt and be happy with what I had. Honestly, this is the best skill you can have in life. I truly believe this and am grateful for how I was raised. My parents, even though we had little, always kept me happy. But when Hailey got to my age, they were in a much better position and wanted to give her everything they could imagine, everything they couldn't give me. Obviously, the only thing they wanted was to make her the happiest girl, and they succeeded. But they also made her the most spoiled. As the years went by, she quickly learned that, no matter what she did, no one would get too mad at her, and she could get away with almost anything. But when she grew up, she never stopped. I asked several times for her not to share my personal stories with others to laugh at or not to talk to my boyfriends to spread lies about me, but she never listened. She wasn't just rude to me, but to most people, except our parents, whom she seemed to love a lot. She wasn't warm or kind to anyone else. She was never a very sociable person. She just insulted people naturally and spoke her mind without caring about the consequences. Also, our parents always treated her like she was still 5 years old, and when I complained, they got mad at me. They wanted me to put up with everything she did and didn't want me to get upset with her, even when I got into trouble. After she made some good friends, it got even worse because they weren't the best influences on her. She constantly made jokes about me, stole things from me, and never listened. We had many arguments that, most of the time, ended with her doing something and me getting into trouble or her crying and complaining to our parents, with the same results. I kept minimal contact with her and didn't spend much time around her. By then, I had already realized that I didn't mean much to her and that, no matter what I did, she would never treat me like an older sister. She was also the reason for my breakup with one of my boyfriends, but it's not worth including that story now because it would probably make this way too long. I went to college and barely came home, so it was like I left her behind. I thought that maybe, with a little time, she would be different or less cruel to me. After finishing college and moving out, she became a bit warmer, but I suspected it was because now she could ask me for money every now and then. Now that you know the context, let me tell you the problem. About 1.5 years ago, I married my beautiful husband, and Hailey was invited to the wedding. I had been dreaming of this wedding for years, so I had many plans and things to organize. Finally, when all the planning and preparation were done, I think I slept, 10 hours in total? I was so exhausted after preparing everything the previous month. Everything was ready to be perfect. The only thing left was for the wedding day to arrive. I was happy, but I had no idea she had planned something that no one would dare to try with me. Believe me, if you don't hate my sister by now, you're about to. Here's how things happened. I had spent months trying to find the perfect dress, and finally, I found it. It was amazing and just perfect, everything a bride wants for her wedding. But when I tried it on to get ready for the wedding, I found that, magically, it had gotten smaller. I knew I hadn't gained weight because I had been controlling myself every day. It didn't make sense, and I started to panic. I was in full-on panic mode, with tears in my eyes and screaming because I couldn't understand how this had happened. Brittany, my best friend and maid of honor, was doing everything she could to calm me down, telling me not to worry. I almost had a heart attack. I couldn't even sit down. Then, Hailey walked in and laughed so loud that, for a moment, I stopped panicking. She said she had played a good joke on me, and when I asked what she meant, she replied that she was the one who had done it. I was about to launch myself at her and grab her by the neck, but I controlled my anger. Hailey then said that someone was already ready to take the dress, alter it, and that they had already asked if they could adjust the size. According to her, it would only take 10 minutes. I was so mad, but I felt that making a big scene right then wouldn't help me at all. Still, I asked how she could do something like this. She just laughed and said she wanted to surprise me and that now I had a great story to tell everyone. Guys, I couldn't believe what she had done. Brittany helped me calm down and asked me to let it go for now. I was upset, but the real surprise still hadn't arrived. The guy she had called said something that shocked her. Then, in a low voice, Hailey told me that the store was closed because the owner had had a death in the family, and there was no way to fix my dress that day. I screamed so loud that my parents and my future husband ran to see what was going on. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't know, and I kept saying she had ruined my wedding. Then Brittany, who is the best maid of honor I could ask for, said she had a hunch and had actually rented a wedding dress just in case something happened to mine. It wasn't the same type of dress, but it wasn't bad. You could say it saved my wedding, and for that, I will always be grateful to my friend. But, although it makes me happy to say I still got married, I was still sad because I couldn't do it with the dress I wanted. It was my one and only wedding, and I don't intend to get married again. So, it was awful. What was even worse was that our parents simply brushed the matter aside and didn't say anything to Hailey. They just forgave her. In the end, I got married, and the wedding wasn't a disaster, thanks to my friend. But after that day, I didn't speak to my sister until the beginning of this year. My parents pressured me to forgive her, and I did, but not because I missed her, but because they wanted me to forgive her. Now that she was getting married. I think you all know where I'm going with this. My sister was about to marry a really nice guy, a catch, unlike her, who's a disaster. I wanted to do something similar, but not as severe, as revenge for what she did to me. I was going to make sure not to ruin her experience like she ruined mine, but I wanted to surprise her and make her go through a bad moment so she could understand what it feels like to have someone ruin your day. My husband and even Brittany thought it was a bad idea. Both believed I would get into trouble with my family, and my husband said I shouldn't lower myself to her level and that I should just enjoy the wedding. But could I really let this opportunity pass by? Would it be fair if I played a prank to return the favor she did to me at my wedding? Guys, the wedding was today, and I don't exactly know what happened. I'm more surprised than you will be. I definitely should have listened to my husband. As much as I don't want to think about it, I think what's happening is kind of my fault. You won't believe this. I can barely believe it myself. A few weeks ago, I shared my situation with you all and got a lot of responses. Way more than I expected. Many of you told me to move on. That support definitely boosted my confidence. I also talked to my husband and asked him not to get mad at me if I went through with the prank. He agreed, but on the condition that I reviewed my plan with him and had him approve it. He wanted to make sure I wouldn't accidentally do something horrible that would get me into trouble. I had a lot of ideas that my husband considered a bit bad, and he suggested ideas that weren't even pranks. After a lot of back and forth, I came up with what I thought was the best plan. At this point, I still don't know what went wrong, but I definitely shouldn't have done it. My idea was simple. Since my sister played the prank of making my dress smaller so it wouldn't fit, I would do something similar, or something close. Obviously, without the last part, because that was a mistake that almost ruined my wedding. So, I had the idea of swapping her ring with one that looked the same but was obviously much cheaper and a smaller size. I thought that when she saw the ring didn't fit, she would panic in front of everyone. After making her worried for a while, I would give her the real ring. I really thought we would all laugh about it later at the celebration dinner. Of course, I knew my sister would be mad. That was the point. I wanted her to experience how I felt when she almost ruined my wedding, but somehow I ended up giving her an experience 1,000 times worse than mine. Before anyone says anything, my husband approved my plan and didn't think it was really a bad idea. So, just before the wedding started, I finally found the best man and, while Brittany distracted him, I swapped the rings. I was so proud of myself and was waiting to see what would happen. The wedding started, and finally, the best part of my plan came. But as soon as the ring didn't fit, my sister didn't seem worried. In fact, she smiled, while her fiancé, Ron, tried with all his might to put it on. She asked him to stop, but Ron seemed really scared and said, "This can't be happening." That's when I noticed that Ron's family was horrified by what they saw and started talking among themselves. None of us understood what was happening. Then, Ron tried one last time, and my sister said there was obviously a mistake with the size. Before I could say a word, Ron's mom came over, grabbed him, and they had some kind of argument. The wedding was cancelled. Everything happened so fast that none of us had time to process what was going on. My sister looked at Ron and kept saying, "What's going on?" And he said he would explain later. She kept shouting, and well, he couldn't leave her like that. Our parents demanded answers, but they just left. At that moment, I realized that, for some reason, my prank was probably what started all of this. All I could do was watch as my sister's wedding fell apart. My sister was crying, and I looked at my husband and my best friend, both with their mouths open, unable to believe what had just happened. My parents started consoling her, and the wedding was officially cancelled. My husband and my best friend are asking me what happened, and I really don't know. Even my sister doesn't know. Brittany even asked me if I caused this, and I told her I was more surprised than she was. I feel really guilty, but I decided to suppress my guilt until I find out the real reason and why this happened. I think we'll know everything tomorrow. This was so absurd that I felt I had to share it here with you. I'll let you know if I find out anything else. My sister won't stop crying, wondering why they did this to her. Ron comes from a wealthy family and is a great guy. Probably the only man my sister has been warm to. I hope this is reversible and that it's not my fault. I'll update you if I find out anything. 2 days have passed, and we found out what happened. Unfortunately, yes, it was my fault, although it wasn't intentional. It's clear that what I did was the only reason why the wedding was cancelled. Honestly, none of this makes sense. Well, after the wedding, we continued trying to contact Ron, who was probably fighting his own battle with his family. Turns out he was trying to convince them to let it go, but after a day, he had to give up. After giving up, he called Ha and explained what happened during the wedding. Now, this part seems absolutely absurd, but it's what Hailey told us, and our parents later confirmed it when they called Ron's parents. It's so unbelievable that, after Ron explained, Reese said that if he didn't want to marry her or had changed his mind, he could have just told her, instead of making up this stupid excuse. So, according to Ron, his family has believed in this superstition for a long time. When the wedding ring doesn't fit properly, especially if it's smaller, it means the marriage can't happen. I wish it were that simple, but there's more. Ron's family has long prayed to and believed in a local deity, which comes from the place they're originally from. The family firmly believes that it's thanks to this deity that they've been able to maintain their fortune and that most of them are successful. Obviously, the younger people in the family, like Ron, don't really believe in it, but they respect the tradition. His father, grandfather, and others before him followed it. They deeply believe that when a person who will only cause harm or something bad is about to enter the family, the deity gives them a sign by making the ring smaller. Apparently, this isn't the first time this has happened, and that's why they believe they dodged a bullet when it came to Ree. Now, I don't want to disrespect their belief, but the deity had nothing to do with the ring swap. It was me. As soon as I saw all of this, I thought I could fix it by simply telling Ron's family that it was me who did it. If the fault for the ring not fitting was mine, then it was something that could be solved. No, well, Ron made a few things very clear to Ree. He had done everything he could, but his family had already made a decision, and now there was nothing that could be done. Even he had given up, and it had only been 1 day since the wedding was cancelled. Because of this, Ron's family had checked and reviewed the ring size several times, which only made their superstition worse. Now they completely believe that Hailey would have destroyed their family. To understand, the ring was custom-made for Hailey a few months ago, but if she loses or gains weight, it might not fit. That's the sign Ron's family uses to know if someone entering the family is the right person or not. I also contacted Ron and asked if he could prove that the rings had been swapped by someone. For example, he told me that his family would simply say he was lying to protect my sister. My sister refused to believe that something like this happened, and my parents can't understand how the ring got smaller. They called Ron's parents, who explained the same thing and refused to listen to any explanation, saying that the wedding and engagement were over. They didn't want Ron to see Hailey ever again. By the way, both Yimi and Brittany told me that it really wasn't my fault, since I didn't know this would happen. But when my parents were asking how the hell this happened and Emmy started looking at me, almost giving me away with her eyes, the situation was so bad that I couldn't admit it. I'm really scared to admit that I'm the reason this all happened. My sister would lose her mind if I did. She might even hurt me. I don't know, I'm a little bad, but this isn't the kind of secret you take to the grave. I don't know what to do, but for now, I don't want to tell the truth. A month passed. Unfortunately, things didn't go as I wanted, but you know, that's life. To be completely honest, I don't know how I thought things would take a positive turn. Anyway, a few days after my last update, I started feeling so guilty that I couldn't just let it go and not tell the truth to everyone. I still had the ring, and both my husband and my best friend weren't making it any easier on me, saying I wasn't doing the right thing. Like, I know, but I also needed time to gather courage. So, I went to my parents' house and told them and my sister the truth. I took my husband with me, but I didn't mention that Brittany knew about the plan. As soon as I finished explaining, the three of them looked confused because they couldn't believe I had swapped the rings. Then, I took the original ring and gave it to my sister. Immediately, she lunged at me and tried to choke me with her hands around my neck. I was so glad I brought my husband because she would have really hurt me if he hadn't intervened. I don't think my parents would have stepped in. She got so angry that she threw a vase at my head. I asked her to calm down, but she didn't. She kept screaming, asking why I would do something like that. I reminded her of what she did to me and said I thought it would be fun, like a kind of payback. Then, she screamed like a dragon, asking how I could laugh at her situation. I explained that I had no idea something like this would happen. Obviously, if I had known, I would never have done it. My dad and mom also started shouting. When I finished hearing their angry complaints, my sister had already called Ron and told him what happened, hoping the situation could be reversed. But when she found out there was nothing that could be done, she almost hit me with a broom. Then, my parents kicked me out of the house and told me not to call them. They refused to speak to me. I simply apologized one last time before leaving and told my sister that, although I didn't mean for this to happen, none of this was my fault. I even said, maybe it was the deity who didn't want you to marry, and that made her even angrier. My parents stopped talking to me completely. A week later, my sister came to our house while we were sleeping, destroyed my vehicle and my husband's, and even threw a huge rock at our window. Our neighbor thought someone was attacking us and called the police, who, upon finding out when we left, found her already handcuffed. She had no right to do that. Yes, I made a mistake, but I didn't mean to ruin her wedding. Still, my parents wanted me to drop the charges and let her go. I refused, and now she has to pay for all the damage she caused. I won't deny that I feel bad for what I did, but it's not my fault that her ex-fiancé's family believes in pagan gods. But yes, she is responsible for the damage, so she will have to pay. Once she finishes paying, we should cut all ties between us. Since I don't have much to report right now, but people have asked for an update, I thought it would be a good idea to share how Hailey got me to break up with my boyfriend. I'm not mad at her for this, now at least not as much as before, because I've learned that, thanks to this, my fate led me to Jamie. Although I don't know if I should thank Ree for this or the deity. Speaking of which, many people said that this deity helps people dodge a bullet, like Ron did with my sister, and that many would like to have it on their side because it would have been very useful in their relationships. Well, I can't argue when they have such good points, so I was dating a guy when I was 16 or 17, with whom I got along well, but he ended up making some wrong decisions, and you could say I dodged a bullet too. You could say the deity worked through my sister. My sister played a prank that made us break up. And as she always said, she didn't mean for this to happen, but as always, my parents didn't say anything to her, and as always, she kept this attitude. She got the brother of one of her friends to play a prank on me. My parents had traveled, and I was old enough to take care of him, so I was probably 17 at the time. She told the brother of her friend to wait for me shirtless in my room. One day I went out with my boyfriend, and when we came back, he was waiting there, and made it seem like we had planned something. Of course, I said it wasn't what it looked like, that we had nothing between us, but my boyfriend didn't believe me, and he left, breaking up with me. When my parents came back, they didn't say anything until my dad told me he was glad I had broken up with him. So there's that update for anyone who wants to know what the deity of Ron's family is. The truth is, I don't know. The family comes from a country I didn't even know existed until recently, so I know even less about the deity. As for my sister, she paid every last cent for the damage she caused, and a little more. That finally allowed me to consider any relationship we had over. With my parents, I had already cut off all contact. She gave me the last check yesterday afternoon. Her face said it all. She tried to prank me by giving me a fake check, but then ended up giving me the real one. And she did it just in time for me to shut the door in her face.